Yeah.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, geeks, nerds, ambassadors, boils and ghouls everywhere, and welcome to the Ambassadorial Wing, an installment in Thriller Thursdays. And I, of course, am your host, the Ambassador. And good evening, everyone. Glad that you are here this evening. And glad to be back. Glad to be live. Glad to be back on my normal Thursday evenings with you all. And kicking off a short run series for the month of October for the season of the witch. And going to be bringing you some interesting streams, some interesting reviews over the next few weeks as we lead up to All Hallows Eve. And tonight, as the thumbnail and the title indicated, going to be bringing you all my review of A Quiet Place and A Quiet Place Part 2. And as always, glad that you all are here. Make sure you smash that like button, share this out with all your friends, and let them know what's going on over on the Ambassadorial Wing. And I do want to say thank you to everyone who has been, excuse me, joining me over the last few weeks, has been joining me as we continue down the road to 500. We just recently crossed 450 subscribers. So I just want to say thank you all very much for your support. It is very much appreciated. And of course, to commemorate reaching 450 subscribers this Saturday night, I will be going live over exclusively on Twitch. And we'll be doing a watch party for one of my favorite films from the 1980s, the one and the only Highlander. But tonight, we darn it, kick off Thriller Thursdays with a favorite of mine, and that, well, I don't want to say a favorite, but will soon has quickly become a pair of favorite movies of mine. And that is, of course, A Quiet Place and Quiet Place Part Two, starring and directed by John Krasinski and his real life wife, Emily Blunt. And I will tell you all, I wasn't sure what to expect with these films. I had heard things about these movies over the last several years. I had heard a lot of my friends say that these films were really good. They were really creepy, really scary. And as always, I am more than willing to give anything new and different a chance. And I got these movies on Blu-ray. One I got on secondhand a few months ago, and the other one, when Quiet Place Part 2 popped up on 4K, I was like, ooh, I definitely gotta get this to go with the other one. And over the last couple of days, I have spent some time watching A Quiet Place and A Quiet Place Part 2, and I have to freely admit to you all, these are some top-notch, creepy as hell movies. And I was like, I love creepy movies. I love horror movies. And what John Krasinski did with these films was create a world that feels very much real in terms of how it's fit into um, our real world and how this potentially could happen. And I want to send a shout to the chat, Mr. Austin Lean. Austin, it is good to see you. I know that we have been talking back and forth on Twitter and on social media. And Austin, if you would like to join me this evening, I'm more than willing to either drop the link in the chat or I can send you the link on Twitter if you are free. If you're not, that's cool. But yeah, these for me were a new experience. I did not go see these in theater because at the time I just wasn't really sure if it was something I was going to be interested in. So I waited and I got them on home video, and like I mentioned, got the sequel, A Quiet Place Part Two on 4K, and we have a 4K player, 4K TV, and everything. Me and the missus, we bumped up for the we paid for the best, and it's been well worth it. But I have to honestly admit, I walked into this completely blind. I had seen a few trailers and everything. I hadn't watched anybody else's reviews of these films. As far as I know, these movies weren't haven't been really heavily reviewed by any other channels I'm aware of. But I really enjoyed the journey that these two movies took me on. And speaking for myself, I wasn't sure what to expect, and that for me was a nice change. It's nice to go into a relatively unknown universe, and what Krasinski was able to do with these two films is really create a world that was somewhat surreal, almost like a dream and everything. Dude, I would, but I just left the house. But next time, absolutely, I will say the theater experience at first was something I'll never forget. I never been more on the edge of my seat. And I'll pop your comment up here, Austin. And hey, dude, it's fine. Just be careful as you're driving. Don't wreck or anything. I don't want you listening to me and going off the road or anything. So, and hey, Nate, it is good to see you, bud. Thank you for popping in this evening. And like I silent movies are something we don't get very often, if ever. And granted, the second movie has a little more dialogue in it than the first one obviously does. But what Krasinski was able to do was tell a very visually engaging and enrapturing story with very limited dialogue. And that was something that I was really impressed with. You know, obviously this harkens back to the grand old days of early cinema with black and white films, and it's something that we don't see very much anymore. I mean, quite literally, the last silent film that I can recall was a comedy. And it was done by one of the greats, one of the absolute greats of cinema, Mr. Mel Brooks, and the movie was called Silent Film. And I think there is only one spoken line of dialogue, and it's right at the very end of the movie. But that was a comedy. A Quiet Place and A Quiet Place Part Two were most certainly not comedies. And I think one of the really cool things about these two films is the fact that the suspense is always building, and there's a real sense of danger for every character on the screen. Not to mention the opening of A Quiet Place, the first film, starts off with a very unexpected death. And I think it really set the tone for just how dangerous this world is. And just so you all know, for those of you that will catch this either live or on the replay, there will be spoilers here. I mean, granted, A Quiet Place came out in 2018. The sequel came out, I think, just last year, somewhere, or yeah, I think it was just this last year or earlier this year, one or the other. But it starts off with the death of a main character, and a character we don't particularly know very well. But it starts off with the death of the youngest Abbott child. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the movie, the name of this family, the main characters, they're called the Abbotts. And you've got Lee, you've got Evelyn, you've got now Lee and Evelyn. Those are played by John Krasinski and Emily Blunt. You've got Reagan, the daughter, who is actually deaf, played by Millicent Simons, I think is how you pronounce her last name. You got Noah Jupe as Marcus, and then, as I mentioned, you've got um, the youngest child, but who was in the movie very, very briefly. And not only is this a horror movie, but I would say more of a suspense thriller, because the creatures, you don't see them very often. They are used sparingly throughout this film. But I will say this, the lethality of these creatures that we see in the film, and we don't even have a name for the creatures per se, but there's a lot going on in this film. And I think one of the main there are several themes going on in this movie that I really did enjoy. And just speaking for myself, it was a very refreshing story, because you have a family that is at odds with one another, so to speak. Or more so, the father is having emotional issues with the eldest child, the daughter, Regan, I think is how it's pronounced or spelled. Because, as I mentioned, I believe she was born deaf, if I understand it correctly. And the opening of the film, you have the family in their former hometown at a store, and the youngest child sees a toy rocket ship, and he wants it. And it's a very sad situation what happens, because the eldest daughter blames herself, and the father blames her, and also, I imagine, blames himself for what happens to when the youngest child is killed by one of the creatures. And also, to the chat, just George. George, is good to see you, my friend. And George, I did see your post on it on Twitter just a little while ago, and I want to offer you my most heartfelt and most sincerest condolences, bud. I know it's not easy to lose a family member. I have lost my fair share, and know that we here at the Ambassadorial Wing, myself included, will be praying for you. And if you need anything, George, you have but to DM me, and I'll do what I can. So, but glad you're here regardless, George. And again, my condolences to you, my friend. So, but as I was saying, what this film does is it builds a sense of danger within the first 5 to 10 minutes of the movie. And it does it in a very convincing and a very powerful and a very emotional way, because you have the death of a main child, of a child in this film, and that's something we rarely ever see in cinema anymore. That was a very risky move, because that for one thing, could definitely turn off your audience, or it can really engage your audience and give them a sense of the stakes and the scope of just how dangerous this world can be. And I, for one, I was like, holy crap, they were really going to go there. And I was impressed. I was really impressed the fact that they did go there with this film. And it is, I will say this, if Mr. Krasinski continues on the trajectory as a director that he established in these first two films, I hope he gets the opportunity down the road to do something that would be potentially Oscar worthy. Not to say that these movies don't deserve some awards. They most certainly do. I don't know if they actually have won any awards or not. But I hope that some doors open for John Krasinski for his skill as a director, and that he gets some more opportunities because what he did with these two films was really something special. And he created a very original world because we've not really gotten a movie that deals with with the family dynamic in this manner, because they're both dealing with an external threat in terms of the creatures that inhabit the world. It all deals um, a particular a family dynamic that we don't see very often in film, and that is how the death of a family member, particularly when it's the result of another family member's actions, not to mention it is the it is is a child within that family that caused the death of a fellow family member. And I found the separation of Lee Abbott from the rest of his family very interesting. I mean, he clearly loves his family, but he's having a difficult time coming to terms with the fact that they have lost at that time, their youngest child, because at the time during this movie, the first movie, Evelyn Abbott, Emily Blunt's character, is pregnant. And like I said, no one is safe in these movies. Anybody could die at any particular moment. I think that was really thrilling thing and the really exciting thing about this film. And well, about both films. I think if you really, because technically, if you look at it, A Quiet Place and A Quiet Place Part Two could be essentially looked at as one long movie. And as I mentioned, over the last couple of days, I spent time watching both of them, obviously, because I was going to review them tonight, but also because I felt this was an appropriate time of year to watch a movie like this. I mean, yeah, obviously it's October, it's Halloween season and everything. And I wanted to bring you all to something a little bit different in terms of the movies that I review, because I haven't I mean, I've covered horror movies in the past, both during the month of October and just off and on throughout the time that I've been on here. But I wanted to cover something that, like I said, that I have not watched before. I wanted to bring you all a first watch review. And I will tell you all this much: I will definitely be going back to watch these movies again, because I imagine there's a lot more in here that I missed on the first watch through that I may catch on the second. But another point about these films I really liked, as I mentioned, the creatures in this film are used sparingly, but they are absolutely positively frightening. I will say this: the design for the creatures, it reminds me of something out of a H.P. Lovecraft story. Now, granted, we learned of the origin of the creatures in the second film, in A Quiet Place Part 2. We find out that they are actually extraterrestrial. They are from outer space. But I will say this: the way they move and the way they function and the way that they're designed, it, like I said, it reminds me of something out of a H.P. Lovecraft story, because they are blind. For those of you that aren't familiar or have not seen A Quiet Place, either one of the films, these creatures have no sight. We assume that they do not hunt by smell; they hunt by hearing. And the design does harken just a little bit back to the Cloverfield monster from Clover, the first Cloverfield movie. And again, when we see the creature, the Cloverfield monster, and the Cloverfield paradox, and you could almost make the argument that that maybe Krasinski got some inspiration for the design of the creatures from the Quiet Place movies. Not to mention, I believe the Cloverfield franchise is owned by Paramount, and Paramount Pictures was the studio that financed and released these films. Now, here's the really funny thing that I did not expect when I was watching the credits, because ever since the Marvel movies came out, you never know when somebody's going to pop in a post-credit scene or a mid-credit scene or something. Now, obviously, for this, there wasn't any because it's not a Marvel movie, very much obviously. But I saw a name in the credits that I did not expect, but that I was actually kind of happy to see, and that was these movies were produced by Michael Bay. Of all people, Michael Bay was a producer on these films, because we all know what Michael Bay is best known for: really big, bombastic action movies like the Transformers franchise and a bunch of others as well. But just the fact that he was willing to put his money up to to get these movies made and get them out, and it doesn't feel like he tampered or he interfered at all with either one of these films, and he just let Krasinski tell his story, not to mention the other producers who were involved. It seemed like there wasn't a whole lot of tampering by the producers or executive producers on these films. I thoroughly was I was like, holy crap, who knew Michael Bay could just be a producer, sit back and say, "Hey, dude, go tell your story, but here's the money so you can do it." I really appreciated that fact, and getting a little bit more into the film, it it's it's a rare thing when I get shocked by a film, but these movies really shocked me in terms of the story themselves, because we with most horror movie genres and franchises, we more often than not get an explanation for the creature or the monster right off the bat, but we have very little to go on in these particular movies. Now, obviously, in the first film, Lee Abbott's trying to figure out a way to keep his family alive, and you get the impression that this guy was a bit of a engineer or um a sound person, a sound designer, a sound editor, something like that. He's got some technical acumen to him, obviously, and he's been working on developing a better hearing aid for his daughter, Reagan, who is deaf. But he always works alone, and we find out through flashbacks and so on why he works alone, because we get the impression that he blames himself for the death of their youngest child that we see at the beginning of the movie. And there is an estrangement there, but it seems like almost a self-imposed estrangement. The fact that his wife and his two other surviving children still want him around, but he can't bear to be around them. And there are some very interesting scenes in this film that really intrigued me. Not to mention, another part of this these movies that I really found interesting is how rooted in reality they are. This family has learned to adapt to live in a soundless world, to live not making any audible noise, or figuring out ways that they can talk to one another, communicate with one another. I mean, the use of sign language in and of itself, I think, was a very cool dynamic that they had in this film. Not to mention, just because the daughter Regan is deaf, but it's the best way for them to communicate with each other without speaking. And the opening of the film, like I mentioned, they're in this little general store that has a pharmacy and everything, and the family's just kind of running around, scurrying around, getting supplies. The children are playing in their own small way, not making any noise, and they're almost playing a unintentional form of hide and seek with one another. And there's there's a very charming aspect to the opening of this film, but at the same time, you have to ask yourself, why is everybody being so quiet? What happened here that no one makes any noise, that doesn't speak a word? I mean, are they just doing it to be respectful to the daughter who's deaf? Because that could be a possibility right there. But also, the fact is, we learn later on that this world has its dangers. And it's obviously these creatures that we don't have an origin for until we find out in the second movie. Oh, they're from outer space. And again, I know that might seem a little cliche, but also I think there is a sense of realism in that, because if there is going to be a threat to life on this planet in the form of some sort of creature, it would be an alien. I think it would be an alien creature, obviously. And I think that's a nice blending of both sci-fi and the horror genres for these films. But the creatures kind of, in at least in the first film, take a back seat to the main story, and that is the fact of this family that has been estranged coming together to survive, and finally coming together and reconciling their differences. Now, I will tell you, like, again, as I said, there's going to be spoilers in this, so heads up now for you, for those of you that have not seen this. There are two deaths of two main characters in this film. Obviously, the youngest child at the beginning, and towards the end, John Krasinski's character, Lee Abbott, he dies, but he sacrifices his life to protect his two children. And during the course of the film, there are several different conversations that are mostly done through sign language. One in particular is between Regan and her brother Marcus, and they're sitting on the top of a grain silo, and it's during the right before the big climax of the film, and they're having this conversation about how Marcus believes that her father will come for both of them, and she says, "No, he'll come for you, but he won't come for me." And I was like, there's a very deep seated resentment amongst this family between Regan and Lee. And I could kind of understand or relate to that, because I've not necessarily held a resentment towards any of my parents because I didn't believe that they would be there for me. But for those of you who know, when I had my falling out with my mother and some other members of my family a few years ago because of finding out about my adoption, I felt very much isolated and very much alone, and I didn't feel like I could trust my family anymore. So I could kind of relate to where Regan, the daughter Regan, was coming from in that particular instance. And there's another interesting conversation. There's actually two or three up in this film. Lee and Marcus are on a hike, and they're going to collect fish from these different traps and everything that they have set in a nearby, I think, creek or river or something. And Lee shows Marcus that if they are around another loud sound source, that they can actually talk to one another. They can't make a whole lot of noise. But the interesting thing is, it was a clever way to allow the characters to actually speak, but also build on a theme within the film. You have to be near another sound that'll drown you out so that the creatures will not hear you. And during that conversation, Marcus tells his dad, I know you love me. You obviously still love Regan, my sister, but she doesn't know this, and you need to tell her. And there's a there right before Lee sacrifices himself purely through sign language. He's staying behind the pickup truck that Marcus and Regan are in. And just through sign language, he tells Regan, I love you. I'm doing this for you. And I always loved you. And I don't blame you for what happened. And it's in that moment he lets out this very loud yell that attracts the attention of the creature. And it buys enough time for Regan and Marcus to get back to the house. Now, the other interesting aspect of this film, we figure out that the creatures do have a weakness, but it's a very specific weakness because there's a dry erase board in Lee's workspace, and it has just a few things on it, and you see all these newspaper clippings. Oh yeah, Zach, absolutely. Hey, uh, Zach, give me just a minute. I will drop the link in the chat, and you are dude. You are more than welcome to pop in and join me. Give me just one moment. Oh, yeah, Zach, I was actually kind of hoping you would pop up tonight because I thought maybe this would be something that you would definitely that you would be interested in. So yeah, Zach, the link should be there now. Give me a minute. I'm actually going to pin it. Man, come on. Hang on one second, bud. There we go. All right, come on. There we go. Come on, a little more. Oh, for Pete's sakes. All right. All right, Zach. Link is there, bud. So I'll give you a minute to get in here, but while I'm waiting on you, I'll continue on. One of the things as I was saying, there's a dry erase board in Lee's workspace, and there's two categories: things about the creatures and things that they have to do to stay alive. And obviously preparing for the birth of their new child that Lee and Evelyn have created, obviously. And it's kept very simple, but I think through simplicity, we get a sense of they are simply trying to survive, and here's what they have to do to survive. And honestly, I found the world building from that aspect to be very, very well done. So, but you know, excuse me. Sorry, guys. I got kind of a bad case of cotton mouth tonight. Don't know why. Drank plenty today, but anyways, one of the other things I will bring up here is the fact that this was a film that took some very interesting risks, and it told a very suspenseful and a very atmospheric story. And it almost reminded me a little bit of maybe something that Alfred Hitchcock would have done, but maybe a film that he would have done. I would even put this just a little bit in the category of something that maybe M. Night Shyamalan would have done in his earlier career before his career kind of went off a cliff. and, and I got just a touch of this movie Signs that was also done by Shyamalan. But I will say this. I think what Straczynski. Okay, here is Zach. And hey Tim, thank you, bud. I do appreciate it. And Tim, is always good to see you. Hey Zach, good to see you, bud.
What's up, Ambassador? How you doing?
Doing okay, can't complain. So, um, your thoughts?
Well, I'm a big fan of post-apocalyptic films in general.
Mm-hmm.
Um, this one I like because both
Mm-hmm.
of them to a certain extent, just because it's doing something different. I'm sick of zombies, man. I'm over it.
Me too. Me too.
Uh,
Go ahead. Go ahead.
like I mean, when did that start? I mean, you had the Romero films, but then it really got insane in like
Mm-hmm.
the 2000s with The Walking Dead, and they came out with World War Z and all this. I'm just sick of it. This is kind of there's a little bit of ingenuity here in the writing and in the
Yes.
creatures, and
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of its own thing in a certain way. I mean, it was a bizarre theater experience. I don't know if you saw it in the theater.
I unfortunately didn't get a chance to, but I like I mentioned, I picked both of these up on Blu-ray. I actually got A Quiet Place Part Two on 4K, and I will say this just for the home experience, it was a really cool ride because I don't know how much you heard me say before you got in here. Silent movies aren't something that we as a modern audience are accustomed to. And granted, there is some dialogue in both of these, a little more so in the sequel than in the first one, but they do keep that element in the second one for the most part, particularly dealing with the daughter Regan. And I will say this: Noah Jupe and Millicent Simmons. I hope this gives them some opportunities as young actors, and I hope that they get to do some more stuff down the road because,
Noah Jupe, I've heard that name
mhm,
before. He was in something I
as
saw recently that wasn't. It was.
mhm,
Let me look it up for you.
okay. Well, and I also brought this up, and I don't know if you how you would feel about this. The design of the creatures, the way they function, the way they move, and the it reminded me something out of an H.P. Lovecraft story. So, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's. I would say it's Lovecraftian. Yeah. Um,
Yeah. Hmm.
but the show I saw him in, where I was like, damn, this is a good kid actor, was a show called The Undoing on HBO Max.
You know, I saw trailers for that, but I never got around to watching it. I isn't that the one with Julianne Moore and Hugh Grant?
Hugh Grant, and it's not Julianne Moore, but it is Hugh
Was it?
Grant, and it's I
Okay.
think it's Nicole Kidman.
Yeah. It was Nicole Kidman. That's right. That's right. I got
But
my
The
actresses
Undoing, though,
crossed up.
I
Hmm.
I tweeted about it because I have never heard anybody talk about it. And you got Donald Sutherland, but and
Hmm.
not to go off track, just saying Noah Jupe
Oh no. Yeah.
killed it in his part in that show, and I was like, damn, an actual good kid actor. I was impressed.
Hmm.
And same
Yeah.
with him in this. Like you mentioned, he was great in this.
He was. You know, I'm a little more forgiving of child actors because they're just getting their feet under them in terms of being actors in cinema in the entertainment industry. But I will say this: Krasinski did a good job in directing these young actors. And I don't know, is Millicent Simons, is she deaf in real life?
I don't know.
Or hang on, you did a little research. I will do the same.
Well, I didn't know Krasinski directed this, to be honest with you.
He actually directed both of them.
Yeah, I'm impressed.
Yeah, as I said, I hope this gives him an opportunity to do some other things down the road. From a quiet, quiet, quiet.
So I didn't know he was a director, to be honest with you.
I think this is actually. Oh, here it is. Is the girl in a quiet place?
His debut.
Yeah, she is. I just googled it. The deaf actor. I don't like the way they word this, but that's a small thing. The deaf actress actually does use a cochlear implant in real life to make things a little less quiet for her, which she revealed when speaking to VPro Cinemas to promote the 2017 drama Wonderstruck, which was the beginning of her. Wow, I didn't even know she was in that. Okay. So actually, she is deaf. I mean, doesn't make a difference to me and everything, but
See, I
you
would
know, I
never even watch a film with the title Wonderstruck.
I might give it a look now that I know that she was in it, because I will say this: the Simmons, she did a good job in this film, and especially I think, especially in the second film, because it does very much center more so around her. And now I will bring this up and
Right.
everything. The second one, we actually have Cillian Murphy in the second one. Have you seen the
Yeah.
second one, Zach?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I will say this. It's nice to see him in something other than the Dark Knight trilogy. Um as Jonathan Crane. And honestly, he did Cillian Murphy has been solid in just about anything he does. If I remember correctly, he was also in Inception, I think.
Yes. Yep.
Okay, yeah, yeah. He was one of the clients that DiCaprio was working for.
Hmm.
And his character Emmett, who was actually a family friend of the Abbotts, I liked his particular journey as well. He goes from being a very hopeless and a very defeated and a very broken man to being someone who was um somewhat more hopeful and more willing to try and do the right thing by his family friends, the Abbotts, and particularly protecting the young girl. Um, I will say this: the part in the part in A Quiet Place Part Two, when they're on the docks and they're surrounded by all of those, well, all those people, you really got a sense of stakes in, you're like, holy crap, that he really did mean what he said when there aren't any decent people left out in the world. Although, of course, we do find out that there are some left in terms of the people on the island. And I like the fact that while Regan is very capable, she's not indestructible. And that part when she's on the train and she's cornered by the creature and the shotgun has jammed, you almost thought, oh crap, is she gonna buy it too, and is this movie gonna take a very dark turn? I was deeply impressed with the risks that Krasinski was willing to take with the characters in this movie. Nobody was safe per se. I mean, the wife Evelyn, the son Marcus, nobody was safe here. And you don't see something like that very often in movies anymore, where you get a feeling that anybody could die. And as I mentioned at the start, him having that scene where the younger son gets killed by the creatures because he's playing with that toy rocket ship. It was ballsy. It was really, really ballsy. And I really applaud him for that move. So,
Well,
and
I'm
I knew.
confused
Mhm.
by this
Go ahead.
part. What? What? They're aliens, right?
The creatures? Yes.
Yeah.
That's established in if you remember the flashback scene in the second movie in A Quiet Place Part 2, there's a flashback at the beginning
At the baseball
before.
game, right?
Well, not just that. If you remember, before Lee goes into the drug, well, the general store that has the pharmacy, the owner is staring at the television. His mouth is kind of agape, and there's a report of some sort of explosion or whatever over in Europe.
Mm.
A building has been destroyed, or a series of several buildings have been destroyed, something along the lines. And then in the ball game, you see that comet or meteor or whatever it is coming through the atmosphere, and then it finally crashes. And everybody's like, we might want to clear out and get out of here and end this game right now. And that's, they don't say it implicitly, but most audiences would be smart enough to figure out, okay, they're saying that these creatures are actually extraterrestrial. They're alien.
Well, the bizarre part for me was
Mm-hmm.
that it looked like they arrived during the baseball game in that region on an asteroid.
Yeah, that's an asteroid and everything. It's some sort of celestial body, and just about
Is
anything
it?
works,
Is
honestly.
it's a ship? You think it's a ship?
No, I think it was some sort of. It could potentially be one. They don't say definitively, but with a movie like this, you could say it was a ship, you could say it was a meteor, you could say it was a comet. Any of those things would fit. Anything for this particular.
And that's one of your suspend disbelief things, right?
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. I don't. Do I believe that there is extraterrestrial life? I'd say there's more than. I think there's plenty of substantial evidence to suggest that we are not alone in
Mhm.
the universe.
I agree.
So anybody, to quote one of my all time favorite movies, anybody that believes that we're alone in this universe is seriously kidding themselves.
Mhm.
So, and I'm okay with it simply being a simple answer. They're aliens. That for me is fine. It
Yeah,
works.
yeah, yeah. But my
Hmm.
uh the part of my brain that doesn't let me have fun watching movies kicks in every once in a while, and it's like
Hmm.
if
Yeah, I
it was
get
an
you.
asteroid, wouldn't they all burn to death, right? Yeah, you know what I mean? But
Well,
again, and I'm not even nitpicking. I'm just saying
mhm.
it's just an observation. Doesn't hurt
Oh
my,
no, no,
affection for either film.
no, I get where you're coming from, Zach. I do. It's I think for me, like I mentioned, and I'll bring up George's comment here. Um, I saw Quiet Place Part Two in Apex Theater, was the only one in the theater. Interesting experience.
It was Ambassador.
George, I can imagine. Like I said, I didn't
The
get a chance to
first
see
one.
either. Hmm.
Well,
Go ahead,
just
Zach.
let me just real quick throw this out there. It
Sure.
was
No,
one of
you're
the
fine.
most bizarre theater experiences I've ever experienced for the first film.
Hmm.
I mean, just bizarre. I mean, you could hear people were trying to be quiet, right? It
Hmm.
almost makes you act like the people you're watching. Really strange.
Well, and I think one of the reasons why is the movie is so immersive. It really draws you into that world and makes you almost be an active participant in it. And that right there is where cinema can be truly transformative for the audience, because when you're drawn into a world like this, it's it can become very surreal because you're thinking, "Oh crap, I don't want to breathe too loud or the people might die." Or, oh my, I mean,
Well,
I'm
it's more like I
mhm,
don't want to draw. It's more like I don't want to draw attention to myself in the theater, right? Which
mhm.
makes you an unwilling participant, right?
Yes. Yeah,
Very
exactly.
interesting, right?
Well, and these both of these films are very visceral in the fact that you feel the stakes. I mean, I know I've said this a few times already, but him starting off the right off the bat, having a main character die and it being a child really gives you a sense of just how dangerous this world is. and just how truly fragile life is in this world. So, and I do want to bring up Marcus Cruz's comment here. Um, Both of these movies are masterpieces. Krasinski is a genius for this, and Millicent Simmons, the actress who plays the daughter, is fantastic. Marcus, yeah. And Marcus, I did see your other comment up here. I will bring this up. Both these movies are proof of why Krasinski and Blunt are perfect for Fantastic Four. I hope Kevin Feige wake up and realizes the potential of casting both of them.
Well, she's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah, and,
Emily Blunt is a star. There's no doubt about it. She's one of the
yeah.
best actresses working right now.
This is only the third movie that I have seen her in. The first one I saw her in was Mary Poppins Returns, and I really enjoyed that. And all.
Okay,
I mean,
haven't
I
seen it.
love the. You haven't. I don't know if it necessarily be your cup of tea, Zach. I don't know how you feel about the first Mary Poppins. If you like it, if you don't like it, or whatever. But I will say this: I think she was a very appropriate casting. I think she embodied the character of Mary Poppins. Grant, this is the slightly different take on the character than what we got with Julie Andrews in the first movie way back when. But her performance as Poppins in Mary Poppins Returns, she lived up to the name. And I will say this: no one can replace Julie Andrews. They can only succeed her. And I think what Blunt did with her performance as Poppins in that film.
Didn't she have a cameo in that?
Who, Julie Andrews? No,
Yeah.
she deliberately and everything, and she did it voluntarily. She deliberately stayed away from the film because she wanted to give Blunt the opportunity to make the part her own. Now, Angela Lansbury had a cameo at the very, very end of Mary Poppins Returns. She was, I think she was in the park and she was selling balloons, because in the first movie you had them all going to the park to fly a kite. In the second film, or in Mary Poppins Returns, the character played by Angela Lansbury says selling balloons. What are you saying here? Yeah, I think I get that reference, Zach. So, and I do want to send a shout to the chat. Yvette Diavol, Yvette, good to see you, madam, and good morning. And thank you for popping by. I do appreciate it, and hope you have a good day. And hope you enjoyed the review, whether you catch it now or you catch it on the replay. So, but yeah, as I was saying, what Krasinski was able to do with these films was really make this world feel real. And as you mentioned yourself, Zach, the audience got drawn into the film itself. And it's a rare experience when you have the audience become an active participant in the film. Yeah, and Marcus, Mary Poppins Returns is amazing in my opinion. That movie made me tear up. Yeah, Marcus, it did for me as well. But I want to ask you this question, Zach.
Mm-hmm.
How did you feel about the estrangement within the family itself between Krasinski's character Lee Abbott and the eldest daughter Regan?
Well, I mean, I think that kind of conflict is necessary. You don't. There's a certain thing about a survival film where everybody is kind of working as a team, and of course you have that in this. But a lot of these movies don't really look at those dynamics to make people real people. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. I kind of mentioned this before you came in. When you have a family kind of in turmoil like we have with the Abbotts here, where the father is holding, or at least it's perceived that he is holding resentment towards one of his own children, you don't see that very often, if ever. And the fact that he seems to be blaming not just himself, but he blames Regan for the death of the youngest child because she gives the little boy the rocket ship, and he takes it and puts the batteries in it, turns it on, and then within a few seconds, you see that creature leap out of the woods and snatch him and
Hmm.
obviously kill him. And then, of course, you have a conversation between Lee and Evelyn after the birth of their other child, and she's like, "You could have carried him. I could have carried him. My arms were completely empty.
Hmm.
Why didn't one of us
Well,
carry them?"
it's a
Mhm.
sign of good writing when a death affects the other characters, because a lot of the
Yes.
time a death is just a meaningless, death. But
Hmm.
a sign of a good writer is writing a death that changes the story and changes the characters.
Yes, because the other, and I will say this, I don't remember if Krasinski wrote the first film. I know he wrote the
He did.
second one. For
Yeah,
did
he
he?
did.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
I will say this: Krasinski as a writer and as a director, he's got potential. He if he gets up, if he gets more opportunities off these films, which he should, and I will say this: I would not be opposed if they do one more, because I would kind of like to see how things play out in this world. Now, I don't want to see this turn into a 10-part movie series. I think 3 movies would be good, because I'm interested to see just exactly what happens in the aftermath of them discovering that the creatures do have a weakness. And well, but let me ask you, Zach, how would you feel? Would you want them to do a third part, or would you rather them just leave it where it's at?
Well, I'm with you. I have a fear of unnecessary franchise, you know,
Hmm.
syndrome. I
Yeah.
don't like that. Uh, in a lot of cases, if you keep going, it can undermine, if not done properly, the previous entries.
Hmm. So, are you for one more movie, or are you against it?
I kind of feel like we've been there, done that. You know what I mean? I mean, they're
Hmm.
enjoyable films. Um, but
Yeah.
see, it's another thing
Mhm.
where we have people kind of imitating these movies too. Right? I don't know if you've noticed that, but you know,
Nothing
I
that
and
I've
I
seen lately.
let me see.
So, but
When did this come out?
the first one came out in 2018. This one came out, I think, either last year or earlier this year. I can't remember which off the top of my head. I know it
Well,
was real recent.
we have kind of a
So,
slew of similar films like Bird Box
never saw it.
and
Wasn't
horrible.
interested.
Yeah, it was terrible. And
That's what I've heard. That's what I've heard. I've heard Bird Box was really, at first, a lot of people were like, wow, this is really interesting. And then the more people started watching, were like, yeah, this really sucks. So aside from Bird Box, I haven't heard if anybody else has, if there's been anything similar to this. But
yeah,
I
there's
mean,
another one. It Comes at Night is somewhat similar too. Have you seen that?
no, you know, the thing for me is when it comes to like suspense or thriller movies or horror movies, I really need to be intrigued or invested. And a lot of the horror or suspense movies that have come out in the last several years, it all deals with the paranormal. But here's the thing: it's all just a bunch of cheesy jump scares. I'm sorry. If I want to watch a jump scare movie, I'll go back and watch like Friday the 13th or Nightmare on Elm Street or Halloween from like the 1980s or the 1990s or whatever, what I grew up on. I'm not going to watch any of this new stuff. I'm not interested. It doesn't intrigue me. It just doesn't excite me. I mean, I'm even skipping Halloween Kills, and I love the character of Michael Myers. I like Jamie Lee Curtis as Laurie Strode, his sister. But for me, I'm not invested in the umpteenth dozen sequel. I've heard of that one, Zach. You could have put that in the public, but that's okay. that's beside the point. I'll bring up Marcus's comment here. These movies also have accurate representations of a dead person and the sign language. It felt authentic and natural. Yeah, Marcus, I will wholeheartedly agree with that. And
well, did you know, Ambassador, that they brought a
Mhm.
deaf character into The Walking Dead recently? Were you aware of that?
I haven't watched The Walking Dead since the beginning of season 5. I completely
I can't
lost
say I blame you.
interest.
Can't say I
I
blame you.
did. Well, the main thing for me was when people started eating people and it wasn't zombies eating people. I was like, nope, I'm out. Click, I'm done. That for me was the breaking point. I was like, nope, I am not going to watch a show with cannibalism. If it's a
Oh, I
zombie
will.
eating a person, that's one
No,
thing. But when
I'll
it's
watch. I'll watch it. That didn't
well, and
bother me.
hey, it just for me, it was. I think it was a shock factor for shock factor's sake. I don't think it would felt necessarily natural per se.
It's all from the comics. That whole thing is from
Yeah,
the comics. So,
yeah, and I'm sure it is. I've never read the comics. It was just something I wasn't interested in. And the other thing is the thing I heard. The series became very repetitive.
no, for sure.
Be on the
Yeah.
run for a while, find a place, settle down, and then something goes sideways, and the
Hmm.
zombies get in, or a bad group of characters get in, or something. And I'm like, I don't care anymore.
I don't
I
either.
did, you
Sadly,
know.
though, I've still been watching it, and it sucks.
That's what I've heard. I've heard a lot of people have said that it really took a nosedive the further along it went, and I'm just like, nah.
To the
But
point where now it's almost kind of goofy. Ambassador, this is not a joke. This
mm-hmm.
is not a joke. Let me
Okay,
reaffirm. Not a
okay.
joke. There was an entire 62 or 63-minute episode based around the central plot point of making soup.
What?
Yeah.
You, okay, I know you're not kidding, but
No, I'm
what?
not kidding.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, good grief!
That's how bad it's gotten.
Oh, oh man.
Isn't it sad? It was
Yeah.
such a badass show for a while,
It
huh?
was.
Really
It really
good
was.
for
I
a while.
remember, I remember Herschel being killed by the mayor.
Oh, that
Yeah.
was so fucked up.
That actually made me sad. I actually lost some
Yeah.
friends, or not some friends, but I took some friends off on Facebook several years ago when I accidentally did a spoiler. I was like, I can't believe they killed off Herschel. Everybody was like, "Hey, dude,
I got that happened to me too.
spoilers!"
I was pissed. A
I'm
buddy of
like,
mine called me up and said, I can't believe it. Herschel's dead. And I was just like, you motherfucker. And you know what I did? I got him back later. He was a fan of Game of Thrones. And I called him up and said, Tywin Lannister just got shot and killed. So I got him back.
nice one,
I got him back.
nice.
And he's like, you
But-
motherfucker. And I'm like, we're even now.
yeah, totally. But I will say this about these films. These aren't necessarily, I wouldn't say they necessarily fit into the horror genre, but they definitely fit into the thriller or suspense genre, and they fit very nicely.
I would
And
say a post-apocalyptic genre.
that too, yeah, I would definitely say that too. Yes, definitely. But it's horror, it's suspense slash post-apocalyptic, done very well. And I think the nice aspect of this, they kept the world relatively small. They kept it focused on the family, on the Abbotts. And you really, okay, I will tell you this. One of the really cool things that I thought was interesting about the first movie, showing how they cook. To kind of bounce off what you said a few minutes ago. The fact that they steam everything or they pickle everything, you see their cellar and they've got all these jarred preserves sitting on these shelves, and you're like, okay, so they figured out how to subsist, how to feed themselves, and how to cook and everything, but in a way that doesn't make any noise. And that would make the most sense because a steamer is going to make very little noise, if any at all. And
Yeah.
I thought that was just a nice little touch. And I liked the lighting system. when the wife Evelyn is in trouble, she gets to that switch in the basement and she switches the lights to all red to show that there is danger or she's in trouble
Yep.
or something to signify. Not to mention it's something that the daughter who's deaf can see as well.
Well, it
And
shows a functional adaptation that they've had to undergo to be
yes,
prepared and to deal with what is they're confronting.
yeah, exactly. And I will say this: the first movie, the way the cliffhanger that it ends on when they use the daughter's modified cochlear implant to incapacitate the creature that's there in the basement, and then the wife uses she just uses a shotgun and just blasts its head off, and I'm like, you must have watched Terminator or something in this world because you're going badass just like Sarah Connor.
Do you find that the durability of the creatures varies in the films? What do you think
No,
of that?
no, I think it is very consistent. It is
Okay,
because they
so I've
establish
noticed
it.
certain things where I was kind of like, ah, but go ahead, go ahead.
Well, when you're dealing with extraterrestrials, you can kind of play with the rules of how they function a little bit more than you can with a real life creature. Now, the thing I will say that they have when on the dry erase board that Lee has in the first movie, they hunt by sound. They are armored all over. What is their weakness? Those are the questions that you should be asking if you're trying to figure out how to either A, defeat or B, simply survive in a world where these creatures exist. Because
Do you see any? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
well, the only thing, the one thing I was going to say, they show the weakness midway through the movie, but you don't realize it at first. But then when you get towards the end and that creature's down there in the basement and it's incapacitated by the daughter's implant, and the daughter and the mother look at each other and they're like, aha, there's that light bulb moment. And then when it gets to the point where it's been knocked out, the mother walks over, it starts to spring up, and she just blasts its head off because all the plates on its head are exposed, the inner workings of its head are exposed, and its brain's exposed. You aim for the head, most anything's going to die unless it can regenerate, and clearly these creatures cannot regenerate. But Zach, go ahead.
Well, there's a lot of interesting possibilities. I mean, here's an interesting one for you, and this is just me with my imagination. Okay,
sure.
What if an alien race had bred here? Maybe this could be a third one. What if a intelligent alien race had bred these creatures to eradicate whatever is on a certain area, and we're testing it on Earth?
That is an interesting theory. I think I honestly, I considered that myself. What if these creatures were engineered by another alien race, potentially as foot soldiers or whatever, or and they did send them to Earth and as an experiment, and they're seeing up in their ship, watching from orbit, saying, "Okay, this one family's figuring out how to kill our genetically engineered super monsters. How the heck do we how do we negate that weakness?" So,
No, maybe they want the weakness, so once they go into that area, they can exploit that. Maybe it was built in.
That's a possibility too.
This will get the Klingons, right?
I don't think the Klingons would necessarily have a problem with this because we use projectile weapons, they use energy based, and for all we know, energy based weapons can kill these things. I mean,
would mow them down.
Yeah, very easily. I mean, I think a Klingon disruptor would be very, very effective against these creatures. I mean, or some sort of sonic device, obviously, some sort of.
I think these creatures would be effective against any humanoid race.
Oh yeah, probably. I mean, even a technologically advanced race might have some difficulty, but if they have an alien equivalent of Lee Abbott on their world, he's gonna figure out how to kill these things. He's gonna be like, okay, let's go build our sonic disruptors and let's go mow these suckers down. Or we'll build some sort of sonic cannon like you saw in Attack of the Clones on Geonosis. Because if you remember the Geonosians, they have these massive sonic disruptors, and they have handheld sonic rifles to as their main weaponry. For all we know,
Right.
yeah, but that's all hypothetical, obviously. So,
Well, this type of design for a creature, I think, really should be shelved. I mean, I
mhm.
like the design,
Oh, I do
but
too.
it's
Well,
similar though to a couple of other ones we've seen recently. Do you find there's a certain similarity to the Demogorgon in terms of at least the face, right?
oh, you talking from
Um,
Stranger Things?
exactly. And
Yeah.
also,
Um,
they kind of remind me of the Thanos grunt soldier creatures.
oh, from Infinity War,
Yeah.
maybe a, um, well, maybe, yeah, maybe a little. The biggest similarity I saw, particularly in the by design and the way it moved, it reminded me of a miniaturized version of the Cloverfield monster from the Cloverfield movie.
Mm,
It'd be particularly the fact that the front appendages are bigger than the back, and it uses they use their front appendages to really propel themselves along, and their combat um actions are very similar to the Cloverfield monster as well. I I don't want to say, now here's the interesting thing. Paramount distributed this movie, and another franchise that Paramount owns is the Cloverfield films, at least the first one, and I think 10 Cloverfield Lane as well. So it is,
I would hate that. I know where you're going with this. I would be pissed.
if they were all connected. I don't think they're
Yeah.
necessarily connected. No, I just think maybe Krasinski might have borrowed a little bit of of the Cloverfield monster design for his own creatures, and he may have even talked with Reeves or anything, saying, "Hey, you mind if I borrow just a little bit of your design for your creatures from mine?" And he's like, "Yeah, sure, it's fine, dude, no problem." I mean,
I
Reeves
would
doesn't say.
be not happy about that. I mean, the Cloverfield franchise is an unmitigated cluster F.
The first one was interesting. I haven't really watched the other two, to be honest with you, so I really can't speak on them. But I did like the first one for what it was.
Which one has
Um,
Goodman, John Goodman in it? Is that the
that was the
second one?
one with that was 10 Cloverfield Lane. That was the one with
That
John
was a good
Goodman.
one. Yeah, that was actually a good one. But that
Mhm,
film, interestingly enough, I don't know if you care, but it was
mhm,
originally a film called The Cellar, which was not connected to Cloverfield
mm,
at all. And the studio got the script and they said, "Oh shit, let's call J.J. Abrams." Right?
mhm. That I was not aware of. So, and Ferris of Ferris Geeks World. Ferris, good to see you, man. Says, "Hey, Ambassador and Zach, do you guys think the aliens in the Tomorrow War sort of take inspiration from A Quiet Place and Cloverfield in terms of the design and the story, because they're kind of similar?" Ferris, I have not seen Tomorrow War, and you probably just heard us say it. I did see a few design similarities with the creatures in A Quiet Place and the Cloverfield monster itself. So,
Is that the one with Chris Pratt?
Tomorrow War, yes, and I have not seen it. So
I haven't
I've heard
seen it
some people
either.
I've heard some people say it's actually pretty good. I've heard other people say it's eh.
I've
So
mainly heard bad.
have you? Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, as I mentioned earlier on before you came in, Zach, I want to cover something a little bit different because, well, for one thing, it's October, and I like covering like thriller movies, horror movies, old school stuff like that. And this was something I had not ever seen. This was like a first time. This was a first time watch for me on both these films.
Oh, just
And
recently?
yeah, just within the last couple
Oh,
of days,
okay. Gotcha.
we've actually had both of these movies for several months. It's just I've been so bloody busy and everything, and I just hadn't had the time to sit down and watch them. And I was like, you know what? There isn't anything Marvel going on right now. There isn't anything Star Wars going on right now. I'm going to be covering some different stuff this month, at least on Thursday nights. And I set this up. I was actually going to go live last Thursday, but I was absolutely tanked and exhausted from work. So I moved the stream I did on the Universal Monsters to this past Sunday. And I'm changing it up a little bit for this month. I'm still going to do some stuff on Saturday nights, but over the next few weeks, I'm going to be doing a lot of old school and modern horror movies, reviews, and so forth. Next week is actually going to be, if I remember correctly, House on Haunted Hill. I'm gonna do a review
Vincent Price, Chris Lee, right?
No, Chris Lee's on it. It's Vincent Price. Vincent Price was in the original. I'm gonna kind of do what I did with the with my Mortal Kombat review. I'm gonna say which one's better. I mean, yes, one's campy and kind of cheesy, and the other one's a little more modern. It's had a lot bigger budget. They could do a lot more with it. Because I enjoy both of them, but I want to have that discussion. Do they parallel each other far enough that one's better than the other, or are they both equal? Do they both have their strengths, weaknesses, yada yada yada? Another one I'm going to be doing in a couple of weeks is I'm going to do a review of The Thing, the original one from the one done by John Carpenter. Let me be specific.
John Carpenter is just amazing.
Yeah, that is a given.
One of my top 20 directors for sure.
Same here.
Maybe higher than that. Could be top 10.
He's in my top 10, most definitely. Something else I'm going to be doing. I'm going to do. I think it's actually going to be on Halloween Eve. That's Saturday the 30th. I'm going to do a watch party for Critters because I love that movie to death, and I have not watched it in a very long time. So I'm going to be doing a watch party over on Twitch for Critters. So, and just George, yeah, it's good to cover different stuff. There is more pop culture than Marvel, DC, and Star Wars. Yeah, George, I wholeheartedly agree.
I'm done with it in terms of the superhero stuff, Ambassador. I am just so sick and tired of it. I do
understand that.
I've been burnt out.
Well, and that's kind of why I did that stream a few weeks ago where I did my review of Star Wars Visions and so on, and just had some Star Wars talk instead of Marvel, because even I get burnt out on it. And as much as I love it, and I like to change things up. And I do want to send a shout out to the chat, and not by any means a dig. Star Wars Theology, Star Wars, good to see you, bud, and thank you for popping in. Do appreciate it. So, and folks, I don't know if y'all caught for those of you that didn't catch my shout out on Twitter, I did include the link for Star Wars Theology's channel. I have checked some of his stuff out. He's an up and coming channel. He's a relatively new channel. So if you're a lover of Star Wars, like yours truly, go check out some of his stuff. And you like what he's doing, give him a subscription and show him some support. So, but like I was saying, any more modern horror or suspense movies just don't impress me. And it takes a lot more than some cheap jump scares and a few creepy voices or images to really impress me.
I think Hereditary might.
I have heard some good things about it. I won't lie.
Don't look into it. Like, don't watch any clips or anything. Just go into it without knowing much.
Mm-hmm.
If I can maybe pitch the movie to you real quick.
Sure.
Because I think this one may get that sour taste out of your mouth in terms of modern horror.
Mm-hmm.
I went and saw the film by myself, which I don't do that often. I went and saw it by myself at like 11 o'clock at night. And I was in there by myself. And when I got out of the theater, I pledged to never watch it again. That's how fucking creepy it was. And I got invited by friends and other people to come see this. I already seen it. Well, come see it again. I'm not watching it again.
Right. Yeah. And Zach, I can actually I do want to address George and Ferris's comments here real quick, and I'll give you an interesting take on me. I rewatched the first Evil Dead last night. Great movie, but it's sometimes uncomfortable to watch. George, you have good taste, my friend, and I will tell you, watch all three. Watch Evil Dead, watch Evil Dead 2, and watch Army of Darkness. You will not regret it. And just for those of you that might be interested, all three of those are currently on HBO Max. And I think actually Quiet Place and Quiet Place Part 2 are also on HBO Max right now. No, wait a minute. No, that's not right. Strike that. Reverse it. But Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2 and Army of Darkness are on HBO Max currently. So,
Love Army of Darkness.
Dude, you will never obtain the Necronomicon. I'm good guy, bad guy. I'm the guy with the gun. I love that line. Bruce Campbell. Yes, he may be a B or C list actor, but he owns it, And if I ever had the opportunity to go to like a con or something, I would be like, dude, you're freaking awesome, and I just want to say thank you.
He's got
And
so much charisma.
He really does. He really, really does. He really does. So, and I do want to address Ferris's comment here real quick. Do you guys think that the Cloverfield franchise sort of going over the hill after the Cloverfield paradox?
Yes.
As you heard it here first.
Yes.
You heard it here first, folks. Mr. Leary believes that the Cloverfield franchise is over with. Ferris, just I have only seen clips of 10 Cloverfield Lane, and I've only seen clips of Cloverfield Paradox. What I saw didn't terribly impress me. I'm not saying that they're horrible films. If you like them, okay, cool. That's fine. You can like them. But the first one was really interesting. I mean, found footage films have kind of had their run in cinema lately and over the last few years, ever since Blair Witch Project. That brings me to my next point. I remember
Let me jump in real quick. Can I comment on that? On the Cloverfield?
Yeah, please. Yeah.
Found footage movies. I recently picked up for $1 a DVD copy of Diary of the Dead. And I went to put it in and I said, oh no, it's a found footage film. Oh, I can't watch it. Right. But Cloverfield, this is the problem with Cloverfield, Ambassador. It's worse than the Star Wars sequels in terms of their organization. Neither 10 Cloverfield Lane nor the Cloverfield Paradox were meant to be Cloverfield films. They were either completed scripts, which were in pre-production, or in the case of Cloverfield Paradox, a completed film that was not a Cloverfield film, that were later changed for marketing purposes to fit into the franchise. It's not a franchise. What they're doing is they're taking movies that otherwise would probably flop, regardless of quality, good or bad. In the case of Cloverfield Lane, really a good film. In the case of Paradox, really a bad film, and just throwing it into the franchise. So it's not really a franchise. It's a collection of orphan films.
Interesting. I honestly was not aware of that. So thank you for enlightening me. To kind of go back to what I was going to say. This was back in '99 when the original Blair Witch Project came out in theaters. And I went to the theater by myself, much like you did for Hereditary, and I watched it by myself. I think it was a matinee. I think there might have been just a handful of people in the theater with me, or if that many. I walked out and I was like, I looked around and I was like, are there any woods nearby? Okay, good. But anytime I saw any cluster of woods, I was like, I don't get me anywhere near any groups of trees. And I was like that for at least a couple of months. And my mother ambassador was like, honey, they're just trees. I'm like, that movie creeped me the hell out. And there's only been a handful of times when I've ever been creeped out by a movie. Blair Witch Project was one of them. Granted, I did get over it. the other film that creeps me out even to this day, and I don't creep out easily, I don't even scare easily, is the Exorcist. That movie, I won't say scares me, but it definitely gives me the walking heebie-jeebies
Mm-hmm.
in more ways than one. So, and I'll bring up George's comment here. Um, I've seen all three of them, watched them a lot. If there are great, there are a streaming service. Glad HBO Max has them this year. Yeah, and George, I kind of figured you were referring to Evil Dead, not Cloverfield.
Somebody
So
asked a Cloverfield question though.
yeah, that was Ferris, and we answered it. Do you guys think that the Cloverfield franchise sort of is going downhill after the Cloverfield paradox? Yeah, I have to.
It's
I
not a
have to.
franchise.
Yeah, as you say, it's not a franchise. It was kind of a mishmash of orphan films that they tried to very loosely connect together through some clips and so on, some inserted CGI
Reshoots.
or yeah, essentially. So,
But the
uh,
second one's good though. I won't say nothing bad about this. I love John Goodman.
he is a very. I will say this. He is a very underrated actor. I recently, just a few weeks ago, I watched Kong Skull Island. I really liked him in that film. I did.
He was funny.
He was funny. He was just a little bit deranged, but he does deranged well, so to speak. Um, One of my favorite roles of his, and it doesn't have anything to do with his role on Roseanne. Roseanne was on the air, and you don't even actually see his face. Him doing the voice work for Pacha for Emperor's New Groove. I loved him. I
Mm-hmm.
loved him as Pacha in that movie. The way him and David Spade worked off one another was just. And granted, I don't think we're actually in the same recording studio at the same time, but their voice work together as Cusco and Pacha, they were hysterical. They were absolutely positively hysterical. I mean, one of my all-time favorite clips. Oh, let me guess. We're about to go over a huge waterfall. Yep, sharp rocks at the bottom, most likely. Rain on.
Yeah, he's great. John
Oh,
Goodman
yeah.
is great. And
Yeah.
he's a very versatile actor too. He can do a good guy
He
or a bad
is.
guy, comedy or horror or whatever. He's great.
He is a real working man actor. And to kind of bring us back around to A Quiet Place. I saw Josh Krasinski on The Office. I liked him as Jim. He was very likable. He was very funny. He was very sincere, and he is kind of one of those jack of all trades. He can act, he can clearly write, and he can clearly direct. And I really hope he gets more opportunities down the road in terms of what he can do. And people will. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's fine. Honestly, this wasn't going to be. I'll give a few more remarks about A Quiet Place Part 2, and then we'll probably wrap up. This was going to be a super long stream tonight and everything. I didn't want to belabor the point in these films. So, but honestly, in terms of the second film, I will say Millicent Simmonds, in spite of the fact that she is deaf, she is a very talented and very gifted actress. And I hope she is not typecast into particular roles just because she is deaf. Because she has, in spite of the fact that she is hearing impaired, she has great range as an actress. She really does, and especially in the second film, she she really makes you feel invested in Reagan's journey. I mean, oop, I lost that. That's all right. He'll probably bounce in a minute. But honestly, I like her performance in both these films, particularly in the second film. I think she was the standout. I'm not saying, oh, there he is. So, welcome back. As I was saying, Millicent Simmonds, she, I think, has the potential to be she has potential to be a great lead, a good leading lady in terms of cinema. And again, I hope that she doesn't get typecast, she doesn't get pigeonholed in terms of what she can do as an actress just because she is deaf. So, and her capacities as an actress, I don't let her by any means diminish because she is hearing impaired. If anything, I think it enhances her performances. And I don't know if she's done any of the moves besides. Oh yeah, she has done that one, the other one, One Struck. And I may have to check that out now that I know that she was in it because she very impressed me. I mean, I'll say this for Emily Blunt. She didn't necessarily take a back seat in Place Part 2, but she wasn't necessarily the focus. It was more focused on Regan in this film, and also on family friend Emma, played by Cillian Murphy. And I think Krasinski has an appreciation for the character actor or the lesser known actor more so than names. So, oh, okay. Sorry about that, Zach. I didn't know. Hang on, I'll pop myself.
Yeah, just make sure people can hear you. I'm not sure if it's me or not. So,
hang on. Check. I'm coming through clear now. So. As they knew coming through clear. Anyway. But anyway, to kind of wrap this up, I will say if they do one more film in this franchise, I would not be opposed to it. Okay, sorry, Theology, I am sorry. Hopefully it clears up. Let me see if I can do something here real quick. The other issue, my computer might be having an update or something. I don't know. So, regardless, I'll go ahead. I'll give my final thoughts in a sec if you want to give your closing thoughts, and then we'll call it a night. So, I hope if they do one more film, I'm not opposed to it. But if they don't do another one and they leave it where it's at, but yeah, I will say is I feel like this was very well run production on both these films. It showed the presence as just such talent behind the camera as he is in front of it. And it's really a testament to his abilities as a performer, as a creative alike. And when he's given the opportunity to really create these immersive and interesting worlds, that he really gets a chance to shine. And if you all have not checked out Quiet Place or Quiet Place Part 2, I highly recommend you do so. And if you can watch them back to back, do so because it is both the movies are an hour and a half. It tells a very tight, very cohesive story that is both emotionally engaging, but also engaging. And it's got a lot of earthy tone in there and so on. And I think that's one of the things that really roots the reality of the world that Krasinski created. So, Zach, that's my final thoughts. I will give the floor to you, bud.
The guy from The Office, who would have figured? You know, it sounds like in every way this is his kind of his brainchild, which is impressive.
Mhm.
I mean, there's something to say about comedic actors and writers that really kind of have a keen sense of drama, which is very interesting. A different sense, a different take on drama and
Mhm.
serious acting when it comes to a comedic talent, be it a writer or an actor, even a director. Like for example, Todd Phillips, who did the Hangover films, also directed The Joker. So
Mhm.
there's something to that, I believe. If you look at Danny McBride, you've got the same thing. Who's famous for Eastbound and Down and all these comedies. Also a very good serious performer. Steve Carell, who is a very you know famous for his comedy, did a
Mhm.
tremendous job in the film Foxcatcher, The Big Short, and a very talented dramatic actor. Which is interesting. I'm not sure exactly where that comes from, but when a comedic actor or writer does something that's not comedy, I generally find it a little bit more inspired. And this is a case of a guy who was known for being a comedic guy, and thank God, like, and another example, Jordan Peele, famous
Mhm.
comedian, Key and Peele came out with Us, and what was his first film?
Get Out.
Get Out, Get Out,
Mhm.
Us, and then Candyman. So there's something to it. I really believe there's something to it.
Well, I think to kind of piggyback on what you had to say, Zach, I think for one, it allows them to dip into different aspects of their creative ability, and they want to show that they are more than just a one trick pony. And I think, as you mentioned, with Krasinski and with Jordan Peele and with Steve Carell, they all had the capacity. They all have this. They have a great deal of artistic ability within them. They just need the proper atmosphere in which to be able to produce um, these particular films. And Bryce, I'm sorry, I don't know what's going on with my computer. Like I said, I may have an update that's pending on my laptop. So um, we're gonna, like I said, I'm gonna wrap up here in a few minutes, but don't know what to do. I'm kind of let me well, hang on, Zach. I'm gonna back out and then come back in. So just
Okay.
entertain the audience for a minute until I get back in. So I'll be right back.
So read some comments here. Hold on, let me find something. Well, Georgia, if you're still here, man, how's your channel going? Haven't heard from you in a while. How's the channel going? I see you got a new name. What's up, Price is Right Review? How you doing? All right, let's try it out. Mic check.
Zach.
Perfect. You're
Oh, okay.
back.
All right. Am I coming through clear now?
A lot better.
Okay. Okay. As I was saying, um, I think with creatives like Linsky and Peel and
Oh, there it goes again. Breaking up again. But it's all right. I can understand you.
okay, I'm trying to speak slowly. Maybe that'll help or whatever. I don't know. I have, like I said, I've got an update on my phone or something that's causing on my computer that's causing this.
There's a thing you can get that's like $20 a month that provides
Mhm.
you a stronger connection. I forget what it's called.
Yeah, that's the problem too. We're out of a rural area and the Wi-Fi signal can go kind of wonk times. So anyway, well, guys, let's wrap this up. Quiet Place and Quiet Place Part Two, stellar films done by a guy who knows what the heck he's doing, and I would highly recommend if you haven't watched these or if you haven't watched them in a while. I know they're more recent films. but particularly during this time of year, they are a good pick. So, highly recommend them, and they get the ambassador's seal of approval. So, I do want to let you all know, for those of you that weren't here at the start, I will be going live this Saturday night over on my Twitch channel, and be doing a celebration of crossing 150 subscribers with a watch party for a favorite film of mine, which will be, of course, the one and the other. There can be only one, and that will be at I believe I scheduled it for like 7 p.m. Central Time. So I will drop the link in the chat as always. So if you want to join me on the panel as we watch Highlander, I will have it up and running, and I will figure out what takes going on with my computer by then. So hopefully I'm coming through a little bit clearer. So, but Zach, always a pleasure to have you here, man, and I do appreciate you joining me tonight, and I hope you enjoyed yourself. And to everybody that was in the chat or is currently, thank you for being here tonight. Hope you all enjoyed this stream. If you catch this, if you caught this live, or if you catch it on replay, make sure you leave your thoughts down below in the comments section. And if you come across this stream and you enjoyed the discussion, even though the audio went a little haywire at the end, and you're not subscribed to the Ambassador Wing, consider becoming a part of it. So
Subscribe now. Thank you, folks.
thanks, Zach. Anyways, folks, you all have a great night. I will see you tomorrow afternoon for our Babylon 5 review, and then, of course, I will see you all Saturday night. As always, until next time, these are the Ambassadors. Signing off.